Hi everyone, my name is Pavan. I'm a front-end developer and I've decided to create some videos. The purpose of these videos is to go over some of the things that I feel could be asked during interviews. I'll try covering React, JavaScript, design questions, and few lead code questions using JavaScript. As part of my first video, I'm going to try the tic-tac-toe game. This is a question that I've seen when I tried searching online, being asked in few of the companies. I was never asked this. Uh, so I'm going to give it a try and try solving this. That I chose React for this because with React, things are far more simpler with state. If you were to do this with JavaScript, it's going to take you much longer time. You will learn a lot of it if you do it with JavaScript. But for the sake of this video, which I want to finish within half an hour, I have chosen to use React. So I'll not go too much into what tic-tac-toe is. I'm going to directly get into building the solution. So let's get started. I'm using the latest React and I'm using hooks in React. So one of the hook is useState. So before you start coding and trying to solve this, you need to understand with React. You have to think of it in terms of what your components are going to look like, what's going to be a state of your application, and how are you going to share the state across different components that you would create. So a few things that you would need as part of this is a board. You would need tile. You would need to use useState because we want to maintain a board and we need to know what are the items that have been clicked. And you will have grid. You will need grid CSS to make it look nice. Any other thing that I can think of? Okay, cool. So let's get first started. So before I get, so one thing that you have to think of is what is a tic-tac-toe game and what are the winning combinations? So let's start with creating a winning combinations array. So I'm going to call it winning combinations, which is an array which comprises of all the possible combinations that could win a game. So one is 0, 1, 2. So I forgot to say this. This is a 3 into 3 game. So we are assuming that it's going to be a 3 cross 3. So what are the all possible combinations of winning? So the 0, 1, 2. Then the next one is going to be 3, 4, 5. The next one is going to be 6, 7, 8. Now, what's the next combination that you could win? So if you look at the one that I've created over here, the next one is going to be diagonal, which is 0, 4, and 8, followed by 2, 4, and 6. And now you could go from top to bottom for all the 3 columns. So it's going to be 0, 3, 6, 1, 4, 7, and 2, 5, 8. Cool. So now we have an array which comprises of all possible combinations of winning. Now let's create a function which is getWinner, which gets a parameter which is the board, and we'll go into what the board is going to look like while we are doing the application. And now we're going to iterate through all the winning combinations. So let's now iterate through the winning combinations. I've chosen to use simple iteration. I've not used the functional for each over here. And now I'm going to do X, Y, Z, which are the 3 values of the current combination which I'm at. And I'm going to see if my board X and my board X equals to board Y and my board X equals to board Z. Then I'm going to return what is the value which is available on board X. So what does this do over here? This implies that if a user has picked X and the value of board X equals to X and the value of board Y is also X and the value of board Z is also X, X is the winner, which is what we are returning over here. And in case if we don't come across any winners over here, we are going to return null. So this is a function that is going to give us the winner of the given board. So now let's go into what we are going to do with the component. So with React, as I stated, you have to think of it in terms of state. So what are all the state values over here? So the state value is going to, one of it is board, who is currently playing, which is, I'm going to call it as X playing. Is the game completed? Any other states? Okay, I think those are the three. If I think of more, I'll add those. So now let's first create board. So I've already imported the useState hook from React, which is available as part of React. So I'm going to create board and set board and useState, which I'm going to currently initialize with an empty array. So for folks who have used React, I think this should be very familiar. For folks who are pretty new to React, useState is a hook which accepts two values. One is a getter and setter. Getter is the actual value that you set, and setter is when you can change the value of it. So what is going to be the board over here? So here, instead of initializing an empty array, I'm going to do the next step where I'm going to set the board equals to new array. And what is my size of the board, which is 3 into 3. And I'm going to fill it with null values for now. So what I've done is I've set a board which was initially empty with an array. So what's going to board look like? So the board is going to look like null, 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 and it'll keep going on till we have 9 items, which is 3 into 3, entered into the array, and all of the values would be equal to null. Now, what do we do with this? So now we are going to start creating the tiles in the board. So let's now create a component and call it board, which accepts a prop. And what's going to be the prop? So one of the prop is going to be board. And it's going to return the board for us. So let's give it a class name called board. And remember, during an interview, it's important that you ensure that these class names are not too general. It is better to give it some specific namespace class names like ng board. The reason is because when you are talking about this, you would want to ensure that you are telling them that you're keeping the specific class names, which should not have collisions with anything else on the page. So always give a namespace so that you can do styling based on it. In this case, I've used ng board. And now I'm going to take the board over here, and I'm going to iterate through all the values. Currently, all the values are null, but I have the item and index. And I'm going to now return and create a tile. I'm not creating a tile component, but if you have time, it's always advisable to create another component and call it over here. But I'm actually doing it within the board, and I'm going to call it tile. And now let's use this board over here. So we have pass board. And to this board, this is now a React component, and we are passing params to it, which is props. So one thing we are passing is the board, which is what we accepted over here. So we did set board new array 3 into 3, and we did fill equals to null, which is 9. And then we have the board map over here. This should have created for us. Let's see. What did I do wrong over here? So I have board map item. So over here, I should have had 9 buttons which were created. Let's see what could be the reason why I don't have all the 9 buttons being created. I think I could have just initialized it over here. Uh, Probably let's look at my console log. There is no error that I'm seeing in my console log. Winning combinations, we have the get winner, uh, and we initialized an array over here. I'm going to comment this code out. And then we have the board for which I'm passing a board, which I'm accepting. And I'm doing a board.map item. Everything seems correct. Yep. Not sure what was wrong. Now I have, you can see over here, I have 9 buttons. And let's also enter the value within the button over here as part of the item. Now we'll go into more on what this button is going to be doing. But now let's start styling this a little bit. So where did I had my index.js? Where is cool? So to the ng board, I'm going to start adding some stylings over here. So to this, I'm going to do a display grid. So now you can see that it's the styling has got changed. We also need to say grid template columns, and we are going to over here do 33%. So which is going to be, so now we have a grid with 9 buttons. Let's ensure that each button over here has got uh, a height which is 250px. This is just to ensure that it looks nice. I think 250 is too high, so let's do 150px. Okay, cool. So we have 9 buttons that we have created. We have given it a class name tile. I could have used the class names and done the styling, but for now I'm sticking to inline style. I would recommend using CSS during your interviews. Try not doing the inline styling. Now, what's the next thing? So we said there are 3 states. So we only created board. Now let's create is x playing and set is x playing and use state, and let's initialize it with true as a default value. Uh, for now, I'm initializing all the states at the beginning. I'll go over some optimization you can do at the end. So now you have, but for now, let's stick to this approach. So now in the board, you have a button. So what can you do with the button? So you can click on the button. So you have the on click. Remember in React, when you have this on click, everything is a delegation pattern. If you were to do this in your own JavaScript, the preferable approach is going to be that you're going to delegate it to a container so that you don't have clicks added to every single button. But in React, when you're doing this, the clicks are actually attached to a parent node. And then there's a delegation pattern which React handles under the hood. So I'm going to prevent default, the default behavior of the button. And I'm going to go and use the props. And I'm going to call the callback method, which would be passed to this board. So what's going to be a callback method? So let's call it on click over here. And you have a function. So with React now, I'm going to execute the prop function that was called, which is on click. And then let's pass the index of the button that was clicked as part of the attribute to this given function. And let's take this index. And what we are going to do is in React, when you're going to update the state, the most important thing is you don't make mutations to the actual state. You always clone the state and then make mutations. So in this case, since board is an array, so we are going to clone board and we are going to clone it using JavaScript slice approach. Slice clones all the values and creates a new array and returns it back. And now you're going to go and say, for this given index, uh, you're going to say the value that needs to be inserted. I'll go into this and I'm going to be set. I'm going to now call set state, set board, which is what I had over here, as the clone board. So what's the value that you want to insert over here? So now we have to decide what's going to be the mark, right? So what is going to be the stamp or the mark that you're going to insert per item in the array? So one simple way is, if X is plain, you're going to say X. If not, we're going to say O. And we're going to use that as the value that we are going to insert into the array. So now what is going to happen now so when I click on this, you can see that X got inserted over here, which is a mutation which happened to this given array that you're holding. So we would have, depending on the index, X would have gone and got inserted into that given index as part of this code, and then you updated the state and add the clone board part of it. And now when I click again, it's still X. Now that's not what we expect from the behavior. We're supposed to now change it to O as part of the next click. With React, this is far simpler. If you were to do this with JavaScript, then you would need to maintain your own state. So I'm just going to go and say that set X is playing as the opposite value of what was there before. So if X was playing, make it set X playing as false. What I get as part of it is when I click on this, you're going to see X. When I click on the next one, it's going to be O, and so on and so forth. So every time it's going to keep toggling the values. Now you can see one thing, that when I'm clicking on this, I'm actually able to click the same tile again. Now that's not what you expect. So a simple solution for that is to you disable the button once it has a value. So you say disable, and you disable it if there is a value inside it. So now what is going to happen is I click on this, and so it's disabled. Okay, my button has got disabled, so now I cannot click on it again. Again, far simpler with React. So we have done a few things now. So we are able to disable the button. We are able to toggle. But now so we covered board and explain. Now let's go into completed before let's go into completed later. Now we have to decide if there's a winner of the game while the game is being played, for which we created a function on the top, which is get winner, right? So now we are going to say winner, and we are going to say get winner, and we are going to pass the board to it. So if there is a winner, then what do we want us to do? We are going to pass completed to the board if there is a winner. So if it is completed, similar to how we did a disabled, when a button is selected, we would go and take the same props, which is completed, or item, we would call it disabled. So let's try it out now. So I clicked on X, O, X, O. Now when I click on X over here, if the logic is right, we already have a winner, and all the buttons on the board everywhere should get disabled. Cool. That's how the logic worked. Now you have a winner, and we have disabled the buttons across the board completely. So we also were able to get the winner logic in place. So now let's go into the next stuff. So in tic-tac-toe, there should be two more options. One is a button to reset the game. So let's now create a component. I'm not creating a component, but I'm just showing you. Let's create a DOM. I'm going to make this style, and I'm going to make it display flex. And justify content space around. So now you have a button over here, and let's call it reset. So we have a button over here, reset. Please, I'm not trying to focus on the styling of anything over here, so please ignore my styling. I would have probably created a padding and created spacing. My whole purpose of this is to just focus on functionality and make it at least look decent so that you can use it, but not do too much of styling around it. So you have button reset. So now, similar to how we now, if you were to do this in interview, I would strongly recommend creating this into a component of its own. Now you have an on click over here. Let's add an on click. We'll do e dot prevent default, which is we are defaulting. Now let's create a reset function. So what all should we do when we do a reset? We should reset the board, right? So we'll reset the board with null values. We will reset is explain to true. And we are also, I think those are two for now. We will add more if there's a need, and we're going to call the reset as part of the click. So now when I do a reset, cool. So it removed the values and the board got reset. So that's to do with reset. So we have a button now over there, which gets you back to how the game was when you would have started. Now, the next important thing is you want to give some status message while the game is going on what's happening, who's playing, is the game a draw, or is the game a win, or there is a winner. So let's create a function called status message. I'm going to copy this. So as part of the status message, what are all the kinds of status message that you would want to show to the user? The first one is if there is a winner, right? So who's the winner? So we're going to take, I'm using ES6 template strings. Winner is the winner. Okay. What's going to be the next one? Now, if it's a draw, how do you find out if a game is a draw? When you have the board with no null values inside it. So equals to -1. That means in the whole of the board, there is no null values. So you're going to say game is draw. Now, next one status message is going to be who is, so the game is either draw, neither is there is a winner. So now whose turn is it? So we already got mark over here on the top, which is the mark that we were supposed to use when you would click. So we would use the same mark and we would say turn to play. Right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a div tag over here. And I'm going to just have this function running, which is status message. Cool. So now it says X turn to play. I clicked on this. Now it says O turn to play. Now again, it's going to say X turn to play. I clicked. Now let's emulate even the winning. And as you can see, X is the winner. And then if I reset, I go back. So now I think the core function of the game is done. Now let's start working on some of the other improvements that you would want to do. So first thing, so when you click on reset while the game is going on, do you expect that we give users a secondary option, a prompt, which tells them that the game is still running? Do you want to reset? Most likely, yes. So what can you do over here? So when you click on the reset button, you can now find out if there is no winner, right? Then you can do window.confirm, which is just a dialog box. Are you sure, right? And if the user chooses to say no, then we just return. We don't do anything, so we don't reset the game. So now let's try it out. I have a game running over here. I clicked on reset. Now I'm going to be prompted, are you sure? I click on cancel. The game is going to continue. I click on OK, the game is going to reset. And if I were to do this, if there is a winner, then you can see that I'm not prompted because of this conditional check. So now we have introduced a prompt over here, giving users an option to decide if they want to reset the game. Next thing is, what about Aria? Accessibility is another important thing that you should always cover during your interview. So what can we do for some basic accessibility? So for the button, it's always important that you actually have a title and you're able to say what is the value of it. So let's, in this case, let's just say we just say over here that please pick up, please click, right? We can also use Aria label over here and use please click. Obviously, you can enhance this and improve this. I think there are better things that you can do over here than just click. You can also say like mark cell as for the next turn. I'm just telling you that please ensure you focus on this title and Aria label and notify that you're adding this. Second thing is for the screen readers to know that there is some activity going on. We used over here a status message which we're notifying. Now you can use Aria live over here and you can call it polite. The advantage you get of this is anytime if this is changing, the user would get notified about actions happening on the board, and they would get to see the status message. The screen reader is going to read that for them. So that's another important thing. Notify whenever there's an action happening. Use the Aria labels appropriately. And for the buttons, ensure that you have your titles or Aria label defined. And you are using the disable property. I think with this, I've covered most of the stuff that I wanted as part of it. Now let's try one last thing, which is trying to get to a draw, if I can. Let's see if there is, yep, no, there was a winner. Oh no, with the diagonal, cool. I assume my logic is going to work and the draw is going to also be shown to the user. Few code improvements that I would do is create a component for this and call it a GUI or a HUD, like in the games, and use HUD component name and declare it over here. The other optimization you can do is please add code comments for all your functions when you are doing this. One last optimization that I can think of is over here, if somebody would say that you want to do this use state operation only once and not do it every time, you actually can use the hooks with useRef and decide to do it only once. And I'll show you an example of it. So let's use useRef. So now let's create a variable over here. Initial load, call it initial load, and we will set a value of it as true. Okay, and over here, I'm going to assign this as an empty array. Now I could do if initial load. So when you're using the useRef, you need to use the current value of it. So why did this? Okay, and current. So set board, which is going to be almost the same thing that I was doing before. So let's check if this is working. This is okay, and then I'm going to set the value of initial load at the end somewhere over here as false, so that next time when this is getting called, it's not going to execute the set board again. It's going to execute only once. You could use effect also, but use effect sometimes is very late, especially if you're doing server-side rendering, which you might do with Next.js. I prefer the approach of doing it this way. Use effect is only when the client is ready. This can be executed on server side, and you can actually use the initial load on the server side to determine executing an action only once. Cool. With this now, I'm going to stop presenting and stop recording. Thank you, guys. I'll try creating more videos, and hopefully I'm able to share my knowledge and help folks as part of the interviews. Thank you.